You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest Greg Bedell, who's running in the 5th Congressional District. He's running in the Republican primary. We're taping this on February 22nd. If you're watching it in the suburbs, the Chicago metro suburbs, it is the week of February 23rd, so it's a fresh show. If you're not in the 5th Congressional District, don't change that dial, don't turn it, because we'll be talking about national issues that are of interest to everybody, whether you're in the 5th, the 10th, the 6th, whether you're in Rockford, Aurora, whether you're in Carbondale. We show often on the Illinois Channel throughout the state of Illinois. So wherever you are, if you're interested in the direction of the country, or if you're interested in your pocketbook, tax issues, gas prices, bailouts, wars, you gotta be interested in that. And if you're watching this in the city of Chicago, it's Monday, March 2nd. It's the day before the primary. A lot of you will be living in the 5th Congressional District. A lot of you, Greg Bedell would hope, would be Republicans and will be voting in the Republican primary. You've got a choice. It appears to be 6 candidates. Listen to Greg, get informed about the other candidates, and make that choice. It's a Democratic district, but it has had a Republican about 12 years ago. What was it, Mike Flanagan?
Yes, Mike Flanagan, correct.
And so that was that brief period between many years of rule by, when rule's the right word, probably by Dan Rostenkowski.
Exactly, right.
And then Rod Blagojevich.
Correct.
So Flanagan was bookended by 2 Democrats, one who went to jail, the other who may be on his way to jail.
Correct.
Flanagan was booted out, lost after 2 years to Rod Blagojevich, but people might want to think about this. Look, we don't endorse candidates, we don't endorse Democrats and Republicans, but we do endorse the notion that everybody who's serious in politics ought to be willing to come on a show like this and talk about the issues and face tough questions. Not all Democrats are willing to do that. Sarah Feigenholtz, who you're seeing a lot as a TV, what do you see, a TV actor, because you see a lot of Feigenholtz ads, but not on public affairs.
Right.
You did see Quigley for a brief period last November, part of the show on national issues, but then we couldn't get him back. You did see John Fritchie, who came here, as he has often over the years, and faced tough questions. You did see Tom Gagan, who's also a Democrat running. And who am I leaving out? And Charles Whelan. And now you're seeing Greg Bedell. And the other Republicans, they're not shying away. We just couldn't get all the Republicans on the show, but it was easy, we should say, to get Greg Bedell here because he's not somebody who's saying, I can't talk about the issues.
No.
Absolutely. He's an attorney, a University of Chicago undergrad, and then an attorney at Hofstra Law School.
Correct.
Right? Been practicing for probably about a quarter of a century.
Very close to it.
Practicing so long you're getting good at it?
I hope so. My clients hope so.
Trials, commercial litigation, representing small businesses.
Correct.
But what people want to know from you, Greg Bedell, look, everybody's concerned about the economy, right? $700 billion in bailouts from George Bush. Was that the Republican approach? Has that now been continued by Obama? You saw one of the captions for the show. Do we have Obama, Bush-Obama bailouts? If you were there last fall when people were voting on the bailout, how would you have voted, Greg Bedell, Republican candidate for Congress in the 5th Congressional District?
On the initial TARP bill, I would have voted for it. And the reason for that is we were in a meltdown. We were on the verge of a meltdown. The market was going down daily by hundreds of points. People were getting margin calls. Mutual funds were having to continually pay out redemptions, which requires them to sell off their own stocks, which was further driving down the market. And people were really beginning to wonder, is my money safe in a bank as well? So it wasn't 1929, but the clouds were beginning to accumulate where I think people were reaching concern levels where if government didn't, in this one instance, do something, there could have been a real crisis of confidence.
So it injected essentially $350 billion into the major banks, right? Is that essentially what the $700 billion bailout was?
Correct.
Program of $350 billion injections or something. The first occurred. The second is now being delivered and administered under Barack Obama, President Barack Obama.
Yes.
The first $350 billion, are you satisfied? Did America get its bang for its buck out of that?
To the extent that it made people step back and say, okay, our economy is not going to completely crash, yes. But there are so many things that were wrong with the way that it was handled. We have to take the lessons from that first $350 billion and act a little bit more responsibly with the second set of the stimulus.
What does that mean?
TARP, excuse me.
Give it to me really succinct so people understand. When you say do it a little differently, what do you mean?
We have to hold the people, the banks that get the money, much more accountable. It cannot just be used without reporting how it's used. It has to be much more targeted. I think Secretary Paulson's initial plan of trying to get the bad assets out of the bank was the correct one. For reasons of finance, of market, of the realistic ability of making that happen, it wasn't done. And as a result, money was just basically given to banks without any strings attached. And we've heard the stories of what's happened with that. It's just not acceptable.
All right, so what do? You want to get the bad assets out of the banks?
Correct.
How do you get them out?
Well, the first problem is you have to identify them, and that's part of the systemic issue that we have with this whole crisis. There was so much leveraging from bank to financial institution. Trying to identify who has what is quite a problem, but we need to do that so the subprime mortgages that are stuffed in the bank portfolios can be removed so people have more confidence in the banking system.
I'm going to spend the whole show on this, but it seems like if they've got bad assets, what you mean is some of those assets are worth less than the market value of what was thought to be market value, say, a year or 2 or 3 years ago, right? They can sell them for 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents. They could put them up for auction. They could. So that's one way in which you get rid of assets. You sell them and you take a loss.
Correct.
But people don't want to do that because they're afraid the losses might be so great that some of those banks, big banks, would go under. Is that the point?
I think so.
So if the government's going to get them out, then it means you and I and the constituents in your 5th Congressional District and all throughout the country are going to pay what the shareholders maybe should pay. Shouldn't the shareholders just take a loss here?
Well, because the entire U.S.
The bank shareholders. Yeah.
Yes, I understand. Because the entire U.S. economy is dependent upon the banking system, it is the circulatory system for our economy. I think the government, it's appropriate for it to step in right now because it has created a market freeze in lending.
Okay. So do that. There's the $800 billion bailout, $800 billion stimulus, maybe it was a Freudian slip, $800 billion stimulus that was put forth by the Democrats. All of the Republicans in the House voted against it. All of the senators, all of the Republican senators, except for 3 in the Senate, voted against it.
Right.
So Republicans as a party have taken a pretty strong stand against the stimulus program.
Right. Well,
where do you stand? Would you have voted the same way against that stimulus program?
Absolutely. Well, I would have voted against the spending program. There's very little stimulus contained in this.
$800 billion is the program, or so. It's about $800 billion. How much of it would you say would be stimulus and how much would be non-stimulus? Ballpark.
$250 million is stimulus.
All right, so you could have cut it down to $250, had the same stimulus, and then you would have supported it.
Yes. Yes. The concept initially proposed by President Obama was a good one. He took a page right out of the Republican playbook of saying we want to reduce taxes, keep taxes down, get money immediately back in people's pockets on a regular basis, not just a one-time check like was done under the Bush administration, and do some investment in infrastructure. It's the government's responsibility to build bridges, to repair roads. And if we have bridges and roads that need repairing, maybe now's a good time to put that in play, to put that into motion. That's part of it. That's a little bit longer term because it takes time to get all these projects going. But it was a proper use of money. But then you had the Christmas tree effect. They asked mayors, send in your requests. We want to hear from you what you want to do. You got everything from a mob museum down in the Southwest, in Nevada, I believe, to a Pennsylvania town that already had 4 hotels and wanted to build 2 more. And it was just a wish list for people. But
you know, the governor's meeting now as we speak in Washington on February 22nd. Mitch Daniels, Republican governor from Indiana, was on Face the Nation with John Corzine, Democrat governor from New Jersey, and perhaps others. Republican and Democrat, those 2 governors are talking about, they don't have no qualms about this. They're taking the money. They're talking about their state is, you know, has $2-3 billion deficits, maybe much larger.
Right.
Actually, probably larger, but they're getting maybe $2-3 billion or more from the federal government.
Right.
So some of the Republican governors are saying, hey, this is not so bad, right?
They've got their obligations. The states are hurting right now.
But where do they get that money from? If there are a number of states that are lagging, that have deficits, and the feds give it to them, where do they think they get it from? Does the Fed have a sack of money somewhere? The federal government?
That's precisely the problem. And
So people in Indiana are paying, in New Jersey, but they're hoping that maybe they can rob California? Well, look at California. They don't have
exactly,
it.
that's precisely what I was going to
So is
say.
Mitch Daniels being a sellout when you say, right now he's a Republican, but I heard him today, he said, I don't get involved in this political aspects of the stimulus. He pointed out there were problems with it, but no, he's not somebody who would say he wouldn't take the money. He's not somebody to be critical. Is Mr. Daniels just playing a game here and not being a Republican true to his principles?
Absolutely not. It's the responsibility of Congress to set spending priorities. Once those priorities are established and there's a fund of money there, it's a governor, regardless of party, it's that governor's responsibility to take care of his or her constituents. And they'd be remiss in their responsibilities if they didn't try and help out.
But Bobby Jindal, who's the governor of Louisiana, Republican, says, look, there's some of this I would take, but some of it is going to require a change in Louisiana's administration of welfare, make it easier for people who don't want to work to get welfare. He said, well, I don't want to do that. I won't take that money.
Good for him.
Would you do that if you were running for governor?
I would do exactly what he did.
You would. Okay, let's switch over to immigration. That seems to be a hot topic in the Republican Party and Republican primary, not so much for the Democrats.
Right.
One, what's your position on immigration? Are you in favor of increased border control?
Absolutely. Not a fence, though.
Why?
Well,
Why isn't a fence one, not the only tool, but one tool in which you would keep people out who were not legally entitled to enter this country?
in certain parts of the border, it may make sense. But to me, it doesn't make sense for two reasons. I think there's a moral problem with it, quite honestly. We're not a country of fences. We have, throughout our history, we have welcomed here. We're a nation of immigrants. But
Legal
more
immigrants,
practically,
do we welcome, historically,
well, the concept
have we welcomed
up
illegal
until
immigrants?
the mid-1920s, that wasn't an issue. You came here, you crossed the border.
Mid-1920s?
Correct. That's when I believe.
Right, that's almost 100 years ago, so it has been an issue for about 100 years, right?
Well, less than 100 years,
80
but
years.
how many years in our history of building our country?
Okay.
And that's during a period when our country really developed and became
So
strong. But that being
symbolically, you
said,
think it's the wrong
exactly,
symbol?
I do.
But you do want to keep people out of the
I do.
United States who are
I
not
do.
legally entitled to come here.
Let me give you the practical effect of that fence, though. If we look at what's happened in the Gaza Strip and the effort of securing the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, they have a fence. It didn't work. People just tunnel under it. Things like that don't work. We can go back in history to things like the Maginot Line. It's better to take money and use it for increased border patrols through human effort. Satellites, sensors, use technology. They'll do a better job than a fence will.
Okay. What about the people who are here illegally, 12, 13 million illegal immigrants? Some people say crack down on employers, they can't hire them, then those people will voluntarily leave. Do you agree?
I don't. I'd
Don't
rather
crack down on employers.
Well, I'm not saying don't crack down on employers. I'm saying don't take our limited budget and put it all into enforcement, because really that's the third step of a three-step problem. The first thing that we have to address is stemming the flow, because we've been having this
Covered that.
conversation.
That's the border control. Right?
No, it's more than that. It's absolutely more
It's
than that.
helping Mexico with their economy, or persuading
Yes.
them to improve their economy, so
Yes.
then people don't want to come here.
Correct. And until
Because-
we deal with those two things, we've been facing this problem. We've been having the same discussion for the last 20 years.
Okay, that's item one. Item two?
Well, first is economic development through committing to NAFTA and using what foreign development funds we have wisely to try and help the economies develop, to take the incentive to come away. With that, simultaneously, we need to increase border security. It is a national security as well as an immigration issue. So rather than take money and increase the number of INS agents that are out running around doing enforcement, I would put that money into better security and better development to get to the cause of the problem, not just a symptom. Now, we are a country of laws. If somebody is found that is not here legally, the immigration and naturalization process should take effect.
You mean people should be deported?
Yes.
If they're here illegally?
Correct.
And do you actively and aggressively go out and try to find those people who are here illegally?
That's the point of actively and aggressively. There has to be some enforcement, but again, if it's a question of allocating resources, I would allocate the resources less in enforcement, more in border security and development to stop the problem.
Path to citizenship for people who are here illegally or not?
We can discuss that when we get a better handle on stemming the flow. But from a compassionate standpoint, if somebody's come here to build a better life, they've obeyed our laws, other than obviously coming in illegally, but they haven't broken any laws. They've worked hard to feed their family. When it comes time to discuss what do we do with this person in the terms of a road to citizenship, we have to take that into consideration. We really do.
All right. Healthcare seems to be on a lot of folks' minds, and just don't have a lot of time on it, but just very briefly, what's your approach to healthcare? Should healthcare be reformed in the United States? Should we move toward a single payer? Speak in the big themes. What would you do? What would you support as a congressman from the 5th Congressional District?
I would support changes in legislation that allow buying groups and the market to help provide lower cost and better access for all people to health care. I think John McCain's plan was a good one. I think
Tax
tax credit, but that was only a part of it. There's a number of laws that prevent cross-state border buying groups, and state regulations can make it very difficult for people from one area to get a policy in another.
From one state to another.
Correct.
So you would try to remove those barriers
Correct.
to increase competition.
We're already seeing on TV commercials for if you don't have insurance or you're in a small working for a small business that doesn't provide insurance, contact this number. The market is beginning to provide those things. Now, let me be very clear in another aspect of this. I am against a universal single-payer health care system because I am one of 2 candidates in the entire field that has actually lived in a country that has that. I spent a number of years overseas living in France, and I can tell you the American people are not being given the straight story on this system. Now, if at the end of the discussion we want to adopt it, that's a decision for the people to make, but they need to know the full story. We're complaining here in Cook County about 10.25% sales tax. Double it. In France, it is 19.6% on almost every purchase. We're complaining about the income tax rates that we pay here in the United States. Double it. The income tax rate.
So your approach is to try to give individuals more choice. Would you like to separate that choice of health care to be purchased by the individual as opposed to their employer? Do you think that would be a good direction? Currently, people say the tax laws are skewed so that it gives an incentive for employers to provide health care. And then people complain when they move from job A to job B, they lose their health care. It's called portability.
Right.
So it does seem like many of the Democrats are somewhat schizophrenic here, because on the one hand, they talk about improved portability. On the other hand, they don't seem to be at all interested in separating health care purchases from the employer and the employee.
Well, the provision of health care as a benefit is really ingrained in our society, and I don't know that it's going to go away.
You don't think it's due to the tax incentives that the federal government provides?
Well, that has a large effect on it, but I think also there's an expectation on behalf of employees. After a certain size of business, it's part of your compensation package. And it provides the large buying power to try and drive down costs. So that may be something that needs to be examined down the line, but the first thing that we have to do is open up to more people the group buying power.
Education, big issue. Is it a big issue in the 5th Congressional District or not, just in the country?
There's a lot of very hardworking people in the 5th Congressional District that are looking to send their kids to school.
Are they getting their money's worth? I mean, they pay a lot of property taxes, they pay through income taxes, they pay a lot of money for education. Are people throughout the 5th Congressional District getting the kind of education they should for the amount they're paying?
Across the board, no. And that's the problem. You have in the city of Chicago, you have some very good schools scattered here and there, and it's very hard to get into them. What we should have is...
Very hard to get in the relatively few good schools.
Exactly, because there's so much competition.
Magnet, there are other
Correct.
Political aspects.
Correct. I think it's more of the magnet situation of competition, but there's so few of these. Right. What I want to see
There's some charter schools. How many, 1-2% of the kids can go to a charter school? Like
I don't know the exact numbers on
that.
It's
pretty small.
Yeah, it's not very large.
So you're pretty much, you got the school in your neighborhood. If you don't like it, tough. Is that the
unless you
attitude,
can afford,
much?
Yeah, unless you can afford a private tuition, exactly. Right. And in my mind, that's not fair. It allows people with the means to get a better school community, which is really the most important thing, is the community aspect of the
So
school.
what would you do to improve the choice?
Vouchers. We
School
have to
vouchers?
give people a choice for the money that they pay. And I'm a firm believer in that.
So if we took, you know what we pay in the city of Chicago? Do you know? It's about a $6 billion budget. It's about 400,000 students, actually fewer, about 370,000. Divide 370,000 into $6 billion, you know what you get? About $16,000 per kid per year. The next time people tell you about the Chicago public schools and how little money they have, picture $16,000. This is, I pretend 16,000, but it could be. This is what we spend per kid per year. We've got we'll use our smaller backpack today. Put that 16,000 in the backpack. All right. Strap, we got 370,000 students. Strap 370,000 backpacks on the 370,000 students. The parents decide if they're happy in the public schools, they point their kid in the direction of the public school.
Right.
Nothing changes. The money just comes right back. 16,000, they get 16,000 per student. But as you say, if you want to exercise choice, if the parent wants to send their child to a private school, and there'd be a lot of private schools. There's some now, but a lot more. If they knew that the kids were going to have $16,000 or their parents were going to have that much purchasing power, out goes the kid from the public school, out goes the backpack, out goes the cash. Competition, innovation occur. You would take that backpack and offer it to all of the parents in the 5th Congressional District
Absolutely.
if you could?
Absolutely.
Do it willingly. Okay.
Absolutely.
Give them choice.
Yes.
Go to a charter school, voucher school, public school, and you think it gets better.
I do, because you talk to educators.
Here,
With
you
one
can hold that.
exception.
There's a lot of people won't touch that backpack.
No, I
but
want this backpack.
You want that backpack. Okay.
With one exception, money is not the answer. You talk to educators, you talk to parents. It's the support for education that initially comes from the family and then the community. If you don't have that backing, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, it's not going to make a difference. Families that are committed to education should be able to take that backpack and find like-minded families so that their children are in an environment where they can learn.
You speak from somebody who knows. You're married, wife Jennifer, right?
Correct.
2 young kids,
Yes.
one 4, one 7.
Correct.
The 7-year-old going to school now?
Yes,
Imagine.
she's in 2nd grade at Mount Carmel Academy over on Belmont.
So it's a private school.
Correct.
You exercise choice.
I did.
You pay twice. You pay
we
the
do.
private tuition and then you pay your taxes.
Fortunately,
right?
we can do that, yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to give that to people that can only afford to pay the one through their taxes.
Barack Obama exercises choice with his wife, Michelle Obama.
Yes, he
They
does.
send their 2 kids to Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C.
As did President Clinton.
So the tuition there for the 2 kids is about $57,000. Might be hard for the kids in D.C. to come up with $57,000, their parents, but I'm guessing, I know in D.C. it's a similar amount that's spent, if not $16,000 per kid per year, might be $13,000 or $14,000. So the kids take that $13,000 or $14,000 in D.C., they could have some similar choice to that of Barack
Correct.
and Michelle Obama.
Correct.
It's only fair.
That's my
Barack talks
attitude.
about being fair. How many Democrats who are running in the 5th Congressional District do you know of who support school voucher, school choice?
I don't know of any.
You don't, and you do as a Republican. People ought to think about it. I mean, you take either a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot. We, again, don't endorse candidates, but we do endorse the notion that people should do what Greg Bedell is doing, coming here talking about the issues. You've heard some of his views. If you like those views, well, do what you think is appropriate, right?
Thank you.
The war.
Yes.
Iraq war, Afghanistan war, you
Yes.
support both. If you had been in Congress in the fall of 2002, would you have voted to authorize the president to take military action in Iraq?
At the end of the day, I would have.
You
I
would.
had my reservations because despite the fact that there were over a dozen UN resolutions which were violated by Saddam Hussein, the fact that he had started 2 wars and butchered his own people, I was concerned about what at least had the appearance, or arguably the appearance, of a preemptive action. And I had great concerns about that. As it played out, and I thought about it more, I see that the architecture of the Middle East has been changed, and I hope permanently. There is now more than just a feeble, but a democracy that is growing stronger every day.
So even if you
the
knew there
Middle
were no
East.
weapons of mass destruction, we didn't know that then.
Correct.
But even if you knew that, would you have still supported, given the president authority to take military action in Iraq?
If I knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction in there,
Right.
no, I don't know that I would have.
Right now, as we sit here and speak, Barack Obama recently in the last week has authorized sending 17,000 additional troops into Afghanistan. That seems to be more a redeployment of troops from Iraq to Afghanistan. Do you support President Obama on that?
I do.
And if he decides to do what I think the generals have asked for, a doubling of troops, it's now 30,000, make it 16,000, that's going to be another 13,000 troops.
Correct.
You'd support your president on that?
I would, because I think what we're trying to implement is the same sort of strategy in Afghanistan that General Petraeus implemented in Iraq. It's not enough to just win the military battles, the engagements. You have to earn the trust of the people. And the trust of the people comes when the people feel safe. And they're not going to feel safe when, unfortunately today we had an example of a suicide attack in Afghanistan. It was very clearly stated by Al-Qaeda that the main war against the United States was in Iraq. Now that that has been shown to be a defeat for them, they have shifted back and are now taking their tactics to Afghanistan. We have to do the same. We have to bring a surge-like mentality to Afghanistan, get in the neighborhoods, let the Afghani people know that we are there. We are not going to cut and run when things get tough. We're going to help secure their neighborhoods, and then they'll work with us.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Greg Bedell. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
He is a Republican candidate. There are 6. You will have a choice if you live in the 5th Congressional District. Many people, not all, but many in Chicago would be in the 5th Congressional District. That is a swath across Chicago's north side from the lakefront to the O'Hare South suburbs. Right?
Correct. West suburbs, right.
And include Oak Street Beach, Old Town, Lincoln Park, Wrigley Field, and then going out to the west suburbs.
I don't think it goes as far south as Oak Street Beach, but very close.
Very close.
Yes.
All right. So you folks, how would you describe in 30 seconds that district, the 5th Congressional
Diverse.
District? Diverse.
Very diverse.
Geographically, give us a rough parameters. What does it look like?
South side of Irving Park to Armitage, almost due west. There's some gerrymandering, a sawtooth here and there, and a jig-jag here and there, but it goes almost straight west to O'Hare to take in Franklin Park, Schiller Park, Melrose Park, Elmwood Park. A lot of hardworking people, a lot of small businesses, which we need to help out.
Lightning round, real quick.
Yes.
Israel. America's to maintain and still be a strong ally of
Absolutely.
Israel?
Absolutely.
Go over to the social issues. Gays, guns, got abortion.
Okay.
You would be pro-life?
Yes.
Would you like to see Roe v. Wade overturned?
Yes.
Okay. So you would like to see abortion illegal except for the life of the mother?
I would like to see the debate return to the states.
Let the states decide?
Let the people through the legislatures decide, yes.
And if you could influence the legislature, you would like to have them make abortion illegal except for the life of the mother? That
Yes.
would be the only exception?
Yes.
Guns, Second Amendment right. There is a right in the Constitution to maintain
Absolutely.
a gun.
Absolutely.
In Chicago, you can't possess a gun, right? Would you change the law so people in their home, if they felt safer, could have a gun, at least in their home?
Absolutely, and I think that's, under the last Supreme Court decision, going to be the law of the land.
Same-sex marriage, you sign on to that?
I sign on to civil unions where partners are accorded the same legal rights of those under the law of a married couple.
But not same-sex marriage?
I don't use the word marriage. That is for
Social
different
Security
institutions.
reform, would you privatize that? Would you allow people to control how their funds are invested?
I think, like many others, after the financial crisis this past fall, views are changing on privatizing Social Security. I'm much more hesitant about that. It needs to be fixed, but giving some people a choice.
Real quick, should there be a secret ballot for people deciding whether to join a union?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, and same kind of secret ballot when people vote.